All right, guys, welcome back. We are here with episode 2, season 2, and you are here with Alyssa and Liz with Christian Life Modern World podcast. We do have one more person here on this podcast with us that has joined our team. Indira is in the background with Liz right now, doing all of our technical stuff, doing a bunch of stuff for our production. She has been such a huge blessing to us. So I just wanted to give her a shout out here. She won't be on this episode, but you may see her in the upcoming episodes. So definitely stay tuned. So here we are. Chava, do you want to take off our topic for today's episode?
Absolutely. So, welcome back, everyone, to our little corner of the world. And today's topic, we're talking about health begins with Christ. And we're so excited for this topic because we have some special guests that are joining us, and they're really going to be the ones driving this conversation and just giving us all of their insight so that we can learn. I did have an opportunity to look up some things what does it mean to be a Christian and to consider your health? What does that mean and why is it important to us, right? So sometimes, and we've spoken about it in the past, that sometimes we try to compartmentalize our lives and we think this is spirituality and this is everything else. And it's being able to understand that there is an integration of every part of our lives that really allows us to live out this Christian life, right? So when we think about Christianity and when we think about Christ and healing, it's considering the fact of healing, right? So we understand that God is our healer, right? Through the wounds of Christ, we have been healed. Healing or health is part of God's purpose, right? I saw here and I thought this was interesting. It says, all health comes from God and our bodies are God. And God has a purpose for everything that happens with our health. And caring for our bodies as a temple of the Holy Spirit is also part of health and nutrition. But the last one that I think is going to be beneficial for us as we get into this conversation is that nutrition health is part of community. This is
Mm-hmm.
how we grow together as a community, being in a healthy group of individuals who are able to fulfill God's assignment, understanding that when we take care of ourselves, we'll be able to do this on longer terms and more effectively because our
Mm-hmm.
bodies are able to do it. So I'm going to introduce you guys um, to Dr. Joel Carrasquillo. He has an MD, an MBA, and an MAJ. He was born in Puerto Rico. He graduated high school from Colegio Nuestra Señora del Pilar. Then he went to University of Puerto Rico. That's where he obtained his bachelor's in general science. That was in 2009. He obtained his medical degree in 2013 from Universidad Central del Caribe School of Medicine in Bayamón, Puerto Rico. And then he went to do his residency in UMass Chan School of Medicine. And he finished that up in 2016. Excuse me. Uh, he completed, yes, in 2016. And in 2019, he completed his master's in business administration with healthcare focus from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He is a board certified internal medicine physician with the American Board of Internal Medicine. He has done many things throughout his career, which he'll have an opportunity to share. In addition to that, he is also part of the U.S. Army Reserve since 2011, and he currently ranks as major and serves as an internist. And he is part of New Life Worship Center. He is part of the worship team. He serves as a board member as well. He is a preacher. He is a teacher. He is a great person to be surrounded by and learn from. And he's currently working on his master in divinity in Christian leadership and church ministries at Liberty University. And he resides in Dudley, Mass with his wife, Dagracia Castro, and his three kids, Gianna, Lucas, and Amalia. So we're going to welcome him in now. Hi,
Welcome, Dr.
Joel.
Joel.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
Oh,
Uh,
welcome, welcome.
yeah,
We
I
are
heard
very
all of
happy to
that. I was
have
like, who's that guy?
you.
Who's that fancy guy?
Awesome, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our other speaker that will be here with us today. So the other person that we have on the podcast today is Chanel. Chanel Assencoa is a 35-year-old career-driven woman who has dedicated much of her adult life to her academic and career ventures. She obtained her bachelor's in sociology and a master's in physician assistant studies from Weill Cornell Medical School. During this schooling, she held positions within the healthcare field while volunteering her time overseas and within her community, doing things such as Mexico outreach in the Family Health Center, College Bound, etc. She practiced as a PA in NYC for nearly a decade in both the internal and outpatient sectors. In 2022, she pivoted her career to business ownership to focus on health education and consultation for holistic medicine. She traveled the country solo for 9 months and began her back-to-back business dedicated to teaching people to heal themselves through holistic and alternative healing modalities. So now we'll go ahead and welcome Chanel onto the screen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yes.
Yay.
Welcome. Awesome. All right, y'all. Well, we are very happy to have you. So we are going to dive in. We have some questions ready for you, and we're just excited to kind of get into this topic with y'all. Not only as the medical professionals that you are, but also the followers of Christ, right? And that is kind of the focus of this podcast is how are we integrating our modern world today as believers in Christ, and how can we fit this modern world into our walk, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, do you guys want to tell us a little bit more of you? Just present yourselves. I know we did like the formal presentation, but just
Mhm.
give us a little bit of insight of who you are and why are you so passionate in those areas where you're serving?
I can.
Either one is fine.
Um, so I describe myself as a mama's boy. If I were living back in Puerto Rico, I would probably be still living with my mom. But I'm a mama's boy, so for me, family is primordial. It's central. But growing up, I was you know basically mainly involved in weightlifting. I'd always loved to go to the gym, and then when I went into medical school and to residency, I saw that disconnect of how we take care of our bodies and how we actually practice medicine. It was a little bit different. So my career has shifted a couple times. I was fortunate, and I think this was God plan for my life. I went into leadership, clinical leadership early on in my career. Also driven by my passion on leadership and business, but I I've been sitting in many committees, chair many committees, and then got into leadership position within the medicine department and the hospital itself. So from that the aspect of the healthcare in general, I got a pretty big sense of where we are, what are we lacking, and where we're going, which is not encouraging, unfortunately. So I've shifted my focus in many ways, but lately I noticed that the importance of going back into the roots. So now I've gotten a couple certifications in nutrition. Functional nutrition is the one that I'm almost completing, and that's where I'm at. I like leadership. I like clinical leadership and clinical operations. But I looked at my career where I want to be, and it's in the community. Is teaching, is helping others to be healthy, truly healthy, but including a spiritual component, right? We're children of God, and He wants us to be healthy and have really good longevity to be effective ministers in His body.
Awesome. Awesome.
Awesome.
You mentioned functional nutrition. What is that?
So functional nutrition, it goes back into the root cause of things, and probably we're probably gonna talk about
Mhm,
this,
mhm.
but it is a different method of looking at things and looking into the root cause of illness and utilizing nutrition to attack those and provide some way or pathway to healing. And it combines regular nutrition for like your regular uh, goers and general population looking to get healthier and build muscle and burn fat and stuff. But functional nutrition provide that layer of looking into disease and getting you healthy in all aspects of your life.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. All right, Chanel, do you want to give us a little bit of more
Yeah,
background than what we gave about you?
yes, absolutely. And Dr. Joel, the functional nutrition piece of it is it's very, important now. I think, especially with where medicine, I think, is. So I'm going to give a little bit of background of, kind of where I gained this passion for holistic medicine. So growing up, when I was like 13 years old, I experienced my mom giving birth to my sister, and from that moment on, I wanted to go into medicine. I knew I wanted to be in medicine. I wanted to be in women's health. I wanted to be part of kind of like that life giving experience, and just that, just helping people. So I sort of dedicated myself to medicine, and I ended up becoming a PA, and worked in internal medicine. I worked in outpatient medicine. I worked in different fields. And I think that, for a lot of us in medicine, especially, and even in the world, when the pandemic hit, a lot of things started to change. The way that we looked at medicine, within medicine. I was working in New York City at the time, and so the way that we looked at medicine started to change a lot for me. And I started doing a lot of research at the time. Just certain things were not adding up. I think that, a lot of us were finding that what we had initially gone into for medicine was, this passion to help to heal people and to really, to get down to the root cause, um, and to figure out a cure, not just a disease management, right? So as I started doing more research, I started realizing that, instead of peeling back layers, we were starting to put band-aids on things. And I kind of, as I started to peel back layers for myself, and also having these conversations with patients, talking about their nutrition, talking about lifestyle, talking about other things, I started realizing, like, wait a second, maybe I really need to take a step back from all of, this approach that we have to medicine and healing, and look at it from a different lens. And so that different lens for me became, how do we look at the trigger points, or the actual the root causes? How do we look at those things and target there? We call it sometimes preventative medicine, but when we start to look at something as being caused by external forces, it's a powerful revelation that your body, and I tell people, God, you know, sometimes these people, this conversation can happen in places where it's not Christianity. You don't know what people believe in, but I say, whatever God you believe in, that God created perfect beings, and our bodies are perfect. So we have to just kind of get back in tune with those those things in our bodies, because a lot of times there's a lot of artificial things that we're putting inside and outside of our bodies that affect it. So that's really what kind of drove me to say, okay, let's take a step back. And then I decided to open up my own company, Back to Base. And with that, I wanted to provide not only education, but a tangible source. As you have these conversations with people, the first thing they say is, that's great, but how do I do this? Right? It's the first thing that people say when you start talking about, anything, lifestyle changes. It doesn't have to be just food. Certain lifestyle changes, it can be daunting. So I decided to start with a product called CMOS, and CMOS got me into a whole other, a whole other field of education. It's, minerals and vitamins, and kind of what the importance of those are. I think in schooling, I think this is something we'll talk about more later, but you know, the schooling aspects that we get as physician assistants, or in, medical school, um, there are there's certain information that we are given that's not necessarily the full picture, right? So I think as we start looking at full picture, which is more holistic views, um, we can target the body, not just looking at pieces, but looking at an entire being, you know? So yeah, that's that was sort of what led me to discover back to base and to kind of integrate this world of Western medicine, all the education that I had, but also bring together this integration of, how do we look at this as a whole picture? And, how do we allow God, this perfect, body that we were given by God, how do we allow that to just align itself to, what the purpose that it truly was meant to be for? So.
I love that. No, and I can definitely empathize with both of you as you kind of talk about this different kind of like realm when Joel was talking about functional nutrition and like you talking about the holistic aspects of health and kind of looking through that lens. Um, I know for myself, I worked for a few years as a pediatric ICU nurse and kind of being in that world. And I mean, you just see how amazing, that God has allowed us to have these medical advances and like life saving in situations where we may not otherwise be able to like save lives in these very traumatic and tragic cases. But as I kind of moved out of that space, now that I'm kind of in a different career path now, I've started to also see, you know, Western medicine, while it's great, and I think it's allowed us to have so many advancements, right? But also, I've been thinking like, medicine is not the only way for healing, right? And I think I've been seeing that more recently in my own life, where even like things like common colds or just like things that we treat without having to go to the hospital, right? It's like when you start thinking about it, like God created us with these bodies. God gave us, nature. God gave us this world around us. And we don't have to rely on these man made prescription pills all the time. Like He has given our bodies capabilities for healing. And being able to tap into that as well has been super cool. So that's why I'm excited to get into this topic with y'all, because I think y'all have really cool insights into it.
Yeah, I was recently in Puerto Rico and I was talking to my aunt who's in her 70s. And I was telling her about the recording that we were going to do. And she just started telling me about, as we're sitting on the porch, and she's like, well, you see right over there, that tree, we would scrape the bark and we would put it in water and we would boil that up. And she's like, we didn't have formula for our kids. That's what we would use. We would boil that up and it gives you like a violet colored tea, and that's what we would nourish them with. And then we would go over there, and that same afternoon, I go and I visit my uncle, and his wife is telling me the same thing. Like, oh, yeah, you see that tree there, and you see that plant over there, and that helps with diabetes, and that helps with high blood pressure. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And all I can think about was the same thing that you're saying right now, Alyssa. God has provided so many resources for us to be able to enjoy this life and to be able to produce and to be able to live healthy lives and to nourish our children and to heal diseases and sicknesses. But I think something that is so beautiful about that, right? So when God created this world and, post, Noah, the flood, and then, the trees are coming back and all these plants are coming back and everything is available to us again. There was one point where Jesus came into the picture, right? So it also says that not only did he provide us with all this nature and all these things that can provide us with healing, but then he said, Jesus, through his wounds, through his stripes, we are healed. So it's like there is like outside of God's creation, it's God himself who provides us with ultimate healing and health and things like that. So I think it's just fascinating um,
Mhm.
to look into that. So we have here, can one of you guys describe to us what is Western medicine and how it differs from holistic health? Especially for someone like me. I'm the only one on this on this platform right now that has no medical background. So teach me, what is this Western medicine and how it differs from a holistic health approach, or does it have similarities?
So I'll start by saying, for me, Western medicine has a large focus on diagnosing and then managing disease. So, Western medicine, when you go through formal schooling, you go through a didactic portion and then you go through a clinical portion. The didactic portion is basically teaching you about the body. You're learning about anatomy, you're learning about physiology, you're learning about the components that make up your body as if it was a car. Think about medical school as almost like if you were going to mechanic school. So you have all of these parts of the parts of the whole, and you're going to learn each part and how it connects, and and then what things could possibly go wrong, right? Um, in my schooling, for instance, we had cadavers. Cadavers are basically bodies that have been donated. People who have passed away, and they donate their entire body to science. And so we get the chance to basically dissect the entire body and learn about it through a real life human. So when I think about Western medicine, I think about this exact same process. You basically take a body that has gone through life, right, and gone through its, can I say Spanish words? Achaques?
Yeah.
That have gone through its, like, achaques, have gone through its, like, please help me translate someone.
um,
Gone through
it's
its,
Illness.
yes, has gone through its, it's gone through its wilderness, has gone through its all of these
bumps and
things, right?
bruises of life.
Bumps and bruises.
There you
Thank
go.
you. Achaques, bumps and bruises of life. And so you open up that body, and then you see, for instance, my uh, person was a 67-year-old man, and he had congestive heart failure. Basically, congestive heart failure is when your heart uh, fails to pump enough blood to the rest of the body, right? And so you're going to see a lot of, on a physical sense, you're going to see a lot of sequelae or secondary effects of that physically. You will see it on, while the person's living, but when you get to look inside of them, you get to see how it affects the arteries, the heart, the muscles, all of that stuff. In my view, Western medicine takes a person that has already kind of gone through its bumps and injuries, and then it tries to figure out how to reverse it by different chemicals, by different, by saying, okay, if we can stop this chemical from producing here, if we can stop the pancreas or from producing, a certain chemical, then we can slow down this effect of diabetes, as opposed to taking a healthy person and saying, how is the actual function of a healthy person? How do we mitigate the differences between the two, right? So Western medicine is about diagnosing kind of the problem and figuring out how can you either mitigate the problem, meaning just make it so that it stops doing it, or try to reverse it slowly. um, Management. So that's my understanding.
Okay.
It's a
Joel.
yeah, it's really really good points there. I mean, Western medicine, if you examine it through history, it has become it has been very good at treating. When you think about Western medicine, is you diagnose and you treat specific things, ailments, symptoms. It has become really, really good at medical intervention and technology. All the technology that we see today is actually primarily driven by Western medicine. So sometimes, when we come into this type of conversations, we're not trying to put an good and evil apart here. I think
Yeah.
Western medicine has improved, at least to some extent, the longevity of our civilization, right? To many extents,
Hmm.
infections and surgeries, but it has become it becomes very specialized and very individualized into different components. And nowadays, so it's really good at looking at disease and treating it with medication or interventions or surgeries,
Hmm.
but through history it has become very compartmentalized. Now we have
Hmm.
under medicine, we have gastroenterology, and then over the past like 15 years within gastroenterology, we have advanced endoscopy. It's a subspecialty of a subspecialty. Cardiology has become the same. Instead of general cardiology, now you do interventional cardiology, or you can do electrophysiology. And that is in terms of paying out to doctors and salaries, that it translates into that too. The people that makes the most money is those that become sub specialized. And when you compare to that to holistic medicine and a holistic approach, then you're going actually backwards. You're going, all right, let me look at the whole picture,
Yeah.
the person as actually as Christ see us. Christ see us as spirit, as a soul, our emotion. That's where mental health comes from. And they see us as he sees us as a body too. He sees us as complete in those three areas. And that's the approach that holistic medicine takes. It goes into, all right, let me keep you healthy. And what can we do to keep you healthy and don't get into the state of a disease? Or if you get into the state of a disease, all right, let's see if we can cure it. Let's see if we can, remove it from your life. And I think that's why, nowadays you see words or trigger words to some people like holistic medicine or functional medicine or lifestyle medicine. There are many different fields now of within the medical arena that are now coming up as a result of this. But it goes back into the taking a look of the patient in front of you in all those three areas of life. And it's your spirit, it's your emotion, and it's your body. And you know, one of the things that I think holistic medicine or functional medicine, whatever you want to call it, it has become good is as treating or attacking a little bit more what we call like chronic disease. If you take a look at the population in the world, what actually triggers death is actually chronic illness outside of like accidents or some tragedy. What kills us are actually chronic diseases that we develop through our life. You name it. It could be heart disease. It could be cancer. It could be neurodegenerative disease, and you include that Alzheimer's and many other brain diseases, and diabetes or like metabolic dysfunction. Those things you accumulate throughout your life, and there are points in our life that even if we don't express symptoms inside our body, there's some changes going on that at many points in our life we could affect change and prevent disease. And I think that's why all this, taking a different look into how we practice medicine becomes very very vital. And you get different names: functional medicine, holistic medicine, you name it. But at the end of the day, you have to look into what is longevity.
Mhm.
And longevity, actually, we can divided into many components because nowadays we use longevity, right? We why do we want health? Well, to live as long as we could.
Mm.
But are you living 80 years or with many disease, with many chronic disease, or are you living 70 years and functional and happy and able to do
Mhm.
a lot of stuff? And that's
Mhm.
totally different. So longevity itself, you can see it as two components: is lifespan, how long you live, but also health span, like maintaining and improving your health, but also your mental function at the same time.
That's good. That's
Mhm.
And I
good.
think an important component there with longevity is vitality, because like you said, you can have a person at 100 years old living and, they have some longevity, but their vitality may not be there, you know, let's just say 100 years old, but let's just say the difference between the 80 and the 70-year old. Vitality is also very important too, but yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting to hear you guys talk about. And I know, at least in my experience, like I had more so experience in the pediatric population, but all I've seen is that we have a generation of children growing up with these chronic illnesses, like a very chronically ill generation. And to one point, that's, we have had so many advancements like in neonatal care and a lot of these congenital illnesses that we now have treatments for, and these children are living so much longer lives, right? But now it's like we're starting that chronic illness at a much younger age, it seems like. And I think at least in the pediatric realm, when it comes to at least like in hospital care, I think they're starting to get a better grip on kind of holistic approaches. Like for example, we do child life therapy a lot, for these young kids, where we actually have child life therapists come in, and they'll focus on like play and like really, having these kids be treated on different elements and not just the medical side, but also making sure that they're, being kids and playing and having these other areas of like, how are we holistically caring for them and meeting their needs. And I think it makes such a big difference in these kids, in their rehabilitation and in their healing, when you're taking an approach holistically with them. And I think there's so much further there is to go, right now, but I hope to see that we're kind of moving in that direction. But even like spiritually, when you start caring for people who are going through, medical illnesses, whether they be chronic or not, and you start having a focus on them spiritually, it has an impact on them physically, right? It almost, gives them more, kind of that drive, to keep going. Or I've even like seen like research studies about how having like a positive mindset and having hope and stuff has such an impact on one's healing. So we're starting to see that holistic approach and the benefits of it. And I know you guys talked about this a little bit, and I know, for example, Dr. Joel, you said now you're looking into like functional nutrition as part of your schooling, but, just in general, like general schooling, whether it be for physician assistants or for medical doctors, is there, much or at all training when it comes to like holistic health, or is that something you really have to kind of seek out on your own once you're a practitioner?
If you look at the medical school curriculum itself, there is, when I went into medical school, this wasn't like too long ago. I mean, I'm a young person still. When I went to medical school, I remember we talked about nutrition probably like, 3 hours in one class,
Yep.
and that's it.
Hmm.
And that's it.
Mm.
And that has been the curriculum for years and years. Actually, I'm glad because recently I saw a post. I don't remember which medical school. They're looking into, revising their medical curriculum to include actually a little bit more of nutrition and how that interplays into chronic disease, which
Mm.
is great. And I think there is a lot of effort out there for all this type of medicine and methodologies. There's a lot of people advocating for this, and there's a lot of people doing research and trying in those spaces, but not all of them gain traction in the mainstream media. Perhaps it could be that many of this stuff, it doesn't generate money.
Mm.
Surgeries, they don't make money. I mean, surgeries makes money, but keeping people healthy, it doesn't generate money.
Yep.
But there's a lot of people doing work in this. But when you look into the actual, educational components and formation of doctors and nurse practitioners and PA, I don't. There is very little into nutrition. There is very little into this lifestyle medicine, functional. But there's none, almost none. If you take into the spiritual, of course not. That's like forbidden. Oh, God forbid that you take. You talk about the impact of praying, the impact of your spiritual life into health. There's nothing.
Mm.
Unfortunately, that's very unfortunate. There, when you look into the osteopathic medicine, because to become a doctor, you could go into medical school, a medical degree, MD, or you could go into osteopathic medicine, and then that's, the DO, the doctors that have the DO designation. That schooling, it does include a little bit of outside Western medicine methodologies. So they do have a little bit more dedicated time into other approaches.
Mm.
So for the very similar for physician assistant, I graduated in 2016, so about 10 years ago. The same. The curriculum was maybe about a day of nutrition, talking about food as it pertains to disease and healing and things like that. But one thing that I think I want to highlight what Dr. Joel said is with a lot of things you have to follow the money, especially when
Mm.
it comes to anything that the government is involved in, right? So the government, we have a certain amount of money, that we expend every year, called in our GDP, that we expend on healthcare, right? And so if you look at United States and you look at other countries that we consider, first world countries that have industrialization and we have medical advancements and things like that, and you compare what we spend on our GDP to what we have as far as our rates of obesity, our rates of chronic disease, I would argue that we have the worst rates. We have the highest expenditure of GDP, meaning the most amount of money that we spend on healthcare. And this is everything. This is chronic disease management. This is, and I mean, top chronic diseases. This is heart disease. This is diabetes. This is obesity, right? And the numbers are scary, guys. The numbers are
Mm.
scary. I think it's about 60% of Americans are considered obese.
Mm.
And the list goes on and on from there. And we as a country, we spend a lot of money, but we are in the worst shape, and it's getting worse. It's not that things have gotten better. It's not that medical advances have gone up and our health has gone up. It's actually has been inverse. The amount of money that we spend on medical advancements and treatments and all of these things goes up, and we get sicker, right,
Mm.
as a group of people. And so I think that is why there are these new approaches, to looking into different things, because I think people are realizing this. And how many people come into the office and say, "Listen, I'm on 10 medications. I don't want to be on these 10 medications." Nobody wants that. And
Mm.
so then when we start saying, "Okay, well, how can we stop? How can we, shave some of these off?" Well, we have to start looking at, we got to stop eating that bacon sandwich every single morning. You got to stop doing that with your Coke. With your can of Coke, we got to stop doing that, and then we can take off a couple of medications. But again, I think, when we talk about Western medicine, not only do we talk about money, but we talk about, let's go back to where did Western medicine begin, right? What was the initiation of Western medicine? What is truly Western medicine? Because if you have to say Western medicine, that means that there is another part of medicine, Eastern medicine, if you will. And that is much more, if you think about in the trajectory of our history as human beings, Western medicine hasn't existed very long, right? What existed before was exactly what Elizabeth was describing. What existed before is people that would go out and they would just, because most people, if you think about, they didn't have transportation. They weren't, traveling around. They were just within their own, communities, right? And so within your own community, you had access to everything that you needed to be able to eat well. And if something happened to you, then, you had some herbs or something like that, right? So this was all contained. We didn't need a research paper to tell us that plant was what you used when you had diarrhea. We didn't need a research paper because we knew that this pattern had been taught through generations and generations, and it worked. When what I call science, right? What I call science is just patterns that somebody realized was happening around them, and they wrote it down on a piece of paper so that everybody else could realize that pattern was happening. Science is not what is written down. Science is happening around us, right? And that goes for everything. It's not just a physical realm. It's not just a spiritual realm. It's a realm that everything is happening around us. And when you stop and realize that there are patterns and you write it down so everybody else can see them, then we say, oh, this is research. Okay. Research on Western medicine is so high because that's where the money is. For other things like holistic medicine, there is something, if you look at the words and don't look for the words like spirituality, look at a different word, placebo effect. Okay. The placebo effect is basically, it is the proof that your power of your mind is so great. For any pharmaceutical medicine to become patented, to go through their process of patenting, they have to pass something called a placebo effect. That means that I give, and it can be double blind. It could be nobody knows what they're getting, usually. So I give a group A a sugar pill. They have pain, right? And I give them a sugar pill and I tell them this is going to help you with your pain. And then I give group B, um, you know, 10 milligrams of it, and group C 20 milligrams, whatever. That's usually how it happens. And then after that, if I think
It's
should
okay.
be okay. And
Mm.
then after they give everybody these medications, they go back and they say, okay, now what's your pain? They rated a pain on a 0 to 10 before the pill, now after the pill.
Mm.
If the medication does not supersede, if the success results, right, does not supersede the placebo effect, you cannot put it on the market. And so what's powerful is that when you look at this placebo effect, there's actually a research paper that was done in China where they did
Mm.
this placebo effect for a knee surgery. Okay, think about this. They took a group of patients that all needed the same knee surgery. It was like a knee replacement surgery. They did a simulation for half of the patients. A simulation meaning that they put them in, um, set them up to as if they were getting surgery, all of the sounds of surgery, things like that, but they didn't.
Mm.
And the other group actually got surgery. The placebo effect, the people who didn't get surgery and thought that they did, they had almost the same exact results as the people who actually got the surgery.
Mm.
The placebo effect is something that if you want to, if you now, there are realms now in science called like quantum physics. And if we think about not just the words, because sometimes we get caught up in nomenclature, sometimes we get caught up in just, in semantics. When you don't think about the words and you think about what it is actually is that things are trying to be described through science, you realize that they're trying to find something called a God gene. They're trying to find something called, the God effect, right? Um, all of these different things, but it is the power of the mind. The power of the mind when you actually realize that uh, it's the same thing as like the power of prayer. There are research projects about this, about the power of prayer, and again, they try to mask this with placebo effect. But I think that with medicine in general, with Western medicine, and this integration of holistic health, I actually believe that this is holistic medicine that is coming back. We are remembering, we are kind of tapping back uh, into these healing modalities that we've always had. This is not new. These are not new things, right?
Mm.
We've always had them, and I think we're just tapping back into them.
I
I
love
think
this. Go
I think
ahead.
there has to be with everything, right? There has to be a balance, right? We see how the current healthcare landscape is, which is not great, and the trajectory that it's going, which is not great. We have more chronic illness, more people with chronic illnesses, kids with diabetes. Years ago, that wasn't a thing. Kids with
Mm.
diabetes, that was like super rare. Now we have a lot a lot of our kids. But with everything, I think there has to be a balance. I think there is some benefit from Western medicine that we could offer to our patients, but we have been so focused on what is the new thing, what is the new intervention, what is the new medicine that we can put in the market, that in the process we have forgotten our basis and how
Mm.
do we keep people alive and how we keep people healthy, how do we prevent medical illness. So I think for providers, I think this is the time to become those experts of how can we become specialists in that intersection of medicine, that we can see our people, our communities as a whole, and not just focusing on the smallest. I'm now a nail specialist. Don't ask me about anything else. I just focus on,
Mhm.
and that's what happens. You send as a medical provider, sometimes you send patients into a specialist office, and they don't care anything else about their organ, that they just know. And it shouldn't be like that. But as providers, as effective, and that's the body of Christ, people, this is a God-given calling, a God-given abilities
Mm.
and privilege. This is a privilege to be a doctor is and a PA is a privilege. So I think we need to be wise and take the opportunity on being in this position and help the body that it's sick, and we are here for that.
I absolutely love this conversation. I think, and this is why we wanted both of you guys here, um, because it brings forth the benefit of every area of health. And I think we're going to be able to get a little bit more into nutrition and tips and things like that on part two. This conversation has been so great. I welcome everyone to please stay tuned because the conversation is not over. Tune into our next one. But for right now, we just want to say thank you and we'll see you soon.